you so much for being here. I deeply always appreciate your fight in the Senate. I cannot believe that there were 22 Republicans that voted in order to give away hundreds of billions of dollars more to protect foreign borders and not ours. Where does that bill stand? You were, of course, the man standing in the gap. You were the Gandalf of that bill. You shall not pass! And it's very impressive, sir. But nonetheless, the Republican Party cucked out and passed it anyway. Where does that stand now? Does that have any chance of getting a vote in the House?
First of all, I love the image. It was much more dramatic the way you described it than it was in real life. I did stand against it. The bill has been pronounced dead on arrival by the Speaker of the House himself. When that happens, it's very unlikely that a bill like this can pass. Now, there are still some shenanigans that can go on that can lead to its passage. We've got to guard against that. But as long as Republicans in the House stay together, as they should have stayed together and could have stayed together in the Senate, they can stop it. There's no way Democrats can do this unless there are Republican defections that materially assist them in what would be a fairly aggressive maneuver on the floor to try to get it passed. Short of those defections and that kind of aggressive maneuver, this thing won't go anywhere. Perhaps the House will come up with its own package. Maybe it will pass an Israel-only package. I don't know. But the bill, as passed by the Senate, has been pronounced and is properly regarded as dead on arrival in the House.
So why do we give so much money to foreign nations? Can you explain that to me?
Well, I think it was Ron Paul who used to say that a lot of foreign aid amounts to poor people in rich nations giving money to rich people in poor nations. And for whatever reason, the U.S. State Department is really into that sort of thing and has convinced a lot of people in the Pentagon and ultimately in Congress and the White House that it's a great idea. Now, look, I'm not saying that it's never in the U.S. national interest to give aid to a foreign nation, but most of the time it's probably not. If we can derive some distinct military advantage, that could be a good thing. But our role, there's nothing in my copy of the Constitution, either in Article 1, Section 8 or any other part of the Constitution that confers authority on Congress, that gives us the power to just do good things generally throughout the world just because we're good guys. We have an obligation to those who elect us and to the Constitution to which we've sworn an oath to make sure that we exercise our authority where it's appropriate, where the Constitution says we have power to act.
So it doesn't say that we have to give billions to Ukraine. Ukraine is a nation that killed an American journalist that was in jail, in prison there. It's a nation that's banning different sects of the Christian church. It's a nation that, quite frankly, has been sort of a kiddie and a grab pot for American elites to enrich themselves. It just seems as though the only real goal for any aid package like this is to continue the war and to prevent peace. I mean, that's at the very least what our audience takes away from something like this. And if you're preventing peace, and if you are leading more and more young men, or now old men, because they've run out of young men, to the slaughter, that seems just like deeply immoral, actually. It seems like more of a moral question than anything. This isn't, of course, simping for Russia. Russia's obviously a dictatorship and run by an evil oligarch as well, who also kills journalists, right? But like, to make some type of equivalency, they banned their elections, right? Like, they stopped, we're defending democracy, and Zelensky stopped all elections. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense, along with the reports of Ukrainian generals having, getting caught with $40 million at the border, new Bentleys, private beach houses and yachts. It does seem like just a massive money laundering operation with no accountant, with no accountability.
Look, to dump $113 billion into a nation that's known for corruption, it just is, and that is known for, among other things, money laundering, and then to say, let's dump another $60 billion into that same country, with $8 billion of that going specifically into a economic assistance fund that the government can use for what it wants. It can pay the salaries of all of its bureaucrats. It can even pay for favored businesses like clothing store operators and promoters of concert tickets. To say that you're going to dump that much money into a country with an established corruption problem, and that it's not going to create more of a corruption problem, is really going too far. But the point you make, the other point you make that I want to emphasize, Benny, is such a good one, which is There's nothing about this aid that's going to help bring about an end to this war.
Yes.
Now let's look at this package, or the desire to help Ukraine, in the light most favorable to those who are advocating for it. Ukraine is a country that was attacked by Russia. Russia's led by Vladimir Putin. He's a bad guy. And all things being equal, I personally would rather see Russia not invading Ukraine and not winning that war. If we wanted to do that, we could have and should have established that a long time ago by establishing a very steady, massive stream of liquefied natural gas from America to Europe. If we flooded the European market with U.S. natural gas, Russia wouldn't have the economic wherewithal to do this. If we didn't see Russia as enjoying such an economic hegemony in the European energy market, he'd never get away with it. But instead, what we're doing is we're dumping money into a war that will prolong the war. Now, it will be good for a handful of defense contractors in the United States who will grow very wealthy off of this stuff. But ultimately, a lot of that's going to leave the United States lacking in critical weapon systems for a number of years while we're trying to catch up. And by a number of years, I mean, it could be 2030, 2035 before we're fully replenished.
Senator, we've spent the show talking about how the Democrat Party does not feel that they are served, and they feel actually quite depressed about Joe Biden. And that's demonstrated in the polling. That's demonstrated in headline after headline from corporate media outlets that were the staunch defenders of Joe Biden, saying he's done, he's finished. We got to get rid of this guy. Yet Joe Biden clings on, okay, and refuses to go anywhere. And it is enraging to the party. It is demoralizing to their party. And it kind of reminds me of Mitch McConnell, to be quite honest, in our party. Because I can't, for the life of me, find a Mitch McConnell supporter. I can't for the life of me. I travel the country, we give speeches all over, and we do the show live every single day. And I've never once in the comment section seen somebody being like, Mitch is my guy. He's my favorite Republican. And he really represents me. That doesn't exist. And so at what point and in what mechanism can the Republican Party finally be represented by somebody in the Senate that at the very least has some type of cursory connection to our interests?
Yeah. Look, you raised some excellent points. It's not too much to ask for Republicans to suggest that Republican leadership in the Senate ought to reflect in some way the composition of the Senate Republican Conference, and even more importantly, the composition of Republican voters throughout our respective states. What I have found so discouraging, and why I've been so inclined to call out Senate Republican leadership, is the fact that, as this vote last week made clear, there are a number of circumstances. This is not the only one. I wish it were. If it were the only one, I wouldn't feel quite as strongly as I do about the fact that we need to go in a new direction for leadership. What we had was Senate Republican leaders again and again and again, and we saw it again last week with that Ukraine package vote, where Senate Republican leadership took a position, whipped votes aggressively in favor of a position that most Senate Republicans rejected and that most Republican voters reject. And meanwhile, what does it do to the Democrats? It unites them. 50 out of the 51 Democrats voted for this bill. Only Bernie Sanders dissented. And too often, this has been the problem. We've got Senate Republican leadership supporting positions opposed by a majority of Republicans, and that unites Democrats behind Democratic policy that Republicans overwhelmingly feel strongly against. And so that's why this is such an issue.
It can't carry on like that, right? Because we have a representative constitutional republic. It can't carry on like that, with Mitch McConnell siding with Democrats and balkanizing Democrat priorities as a Republican.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And look, we have every 2 years to elect a new leadership team. So that will come no matter what at the end of November. Should things change between now and then, it could come sooner, but that hasn't happened among Senate Republicans in a very long time. Whether this happens sooner or later, this is a discussion that's been long overdue. Now, we had some of that discussion after the November 2022 election cycle, and I nominated Rick Scott to be our leader. Rick Scott ran. He didn't win, but Rick Scott and I both got removed from the Senate Commerce Committee in the wake of that. It's one of many points that we've got to discuss about what it is that we want. Should the Senate Republican leader really have that kind of power to just remove people from committees just because they supported someone else in a leadership race? Should the Senate Republican leader really be someone who time and time again gets his entire leadership team backing a position that unites Democrats and deeply, sharply divides and infuriates Republicans? I think the answer to both questions is no.
That was seen in perfect relief with the immigration bill. That was so atrocious. Even those who are very, mild-mannered Republicans were like, this is awful. This is like the total and complete legalization of open border policies with the endorsement of the Republican Party. I mean, it's a fifth column, Senator, at this point, right? It's like using the name of the Republican Party to back Democrat policies.
No, that's right. And here's the issue that I had with that very often goes unmentioned. What we decided like 3 months ago as Senate Republicans was, look, most of us don't want to fund Ukraine anymore. $113 billion is more than everybody else combined, as far as I can tell, has given to that effort. And we shouldn't be giving more. It is certainly not now. But if Democrats really want that, and the only way we can get the Biden administration to actually enforce the border would be to use this as leverage to get them to do that, then maybe we could consider that. Maybe if you came up with a package that was so aggressive, that would so severely tie the administration's hands so that it would have to finally bring security to the border, that might be worth considering. I would at least find that difficult to dismiss cavalierly if we had legislation that would actually do that. Even if it did send money to Ukraine, I'd have to consider it. So we all agreed on that. And, there was a months-long negotiation that, for reasons I've never been able to understand, involved our primary negotiator being instructed by our leadership, apparently, not to even propose conditioning the actual release of any Ukraine funding to the achievement of border security metrics, to actually achieving operational control of the border. And so when it came out, it didn't have that or anything that would comparably force the issue of border security. We had no choice but to oppose it. And all but 4 of us ultimately did oppose it. But after that, Senate Republican leadership said, oh, okay, I guess you guys don't want border security after all. Let's go ahead and pass Ukraine funding. I really don't understand it. This is not the work of someone who was working in good faith to unite Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, clearly. And what will we see when the Mayorkas impeachment rolls through the Senate in the next couple of weeks?
I sent a letter today to Senator McConnell. It was signed by 13 Senate Republicans. I hope to get more, echoing the concerns expressed in it. And in that letter, I explained that we can't get rid of these impeachment articles simply by a motion to table. It's our understanding that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats want to get rid of it by just passing a motion to table. Well, you don't table impeachment articles. Look, Article 1, Section 2 gives the impeachment power to the House. It gives the Senate the sole power to try all impeachments. Nowhere in the Constitution and nowhere in the Senate's standing rules on impeachment does it suggest that it's remotely appropriate to simply table them. A tabling motion says we're not saying this is good or bad, right or wrong, guilt or innocence is not found. We're just setting it aside. There's no place for that under our system. And I'm encouraging my Republican colleagues and the Republican leader in the Senate, Senator McConnell, to stand behind this point that we need to defend.
So you're saying that McConnell might not even fight to get a trial for Mayorkas. He may just allow them to brush it under the rug.
Look, I'm not saying that. To be honest, I don't know where he's going to come down on this. All I do know is that he hasn't yet spoken on it. Now, to be clear, he's been tied up with a number of other things, and he may just not have had occasion to do it. So I certainly don't want to speak for him, but I am trying to encourage him to take a position that says, yeah, we've got a duty to conduct this trial. Now, that doesn't always mean that you go all the way through. In some circumstances, it may be appropriate, as it was with the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump. Many of us believed that most Republicans believed, including myself, that the Senate lacked jurisdiction in that case. And we voted after being impaneled and sworn in to decide the case and going through all the other processes, not tabling it. We voted on the motion to dismiss for lack of jurisdiction. That failed, and then the trial proceeded. But to simply table it, it allows the Senate to avoid altogether the question of whether we have jurisdiction, whether they have stated a claim upon which someone can be impeached, and whether the party is guilty or innocent. That's not appropriate.
You say that Mitch McConnell hasn't spoken on this yet, but there have been number of instances, Senator, where the leader of your party in the Senate just hasn't spoken, like at all. Like during press conferences, he just stops speaking and stares off blankly into the middle distance. We're not here to make fun. We've oft held on this show the rigid rule that people who are of a declining mental capacity should be in homes and surrounded by their loved ones and shouldn't actually be running the most powerful country and economy and military on earth. That goes for Joe Biden. It goes for Mitch McConnell. It goes for anybody who's careening towards their 90s. Yet situations like this happen often, actually, for Mitch. They've happened a couple times. He's had a couple falls, been in the hospital, concussions, broken bones, and then just straight up blanking. It doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. What do you think when you see clips like this?
Well, look, it's concerning, and my sympathies go out to anyone who experiences health conditions like those. Look, my grievance with him is not something that involves his health. My grievance with him actually doesn't have to do with his ineffectiveness. It has to do with his effectiveness, often at uniting Democrats, bringing a few Republicans along in order to achieve cloture, and a few more for good measure, and in the process, alienating a lot of Republican voters around my state and around every state, or at least every state with one or more Republican senators. In so doing, that's my concern, and I think that's the discussion we need to have. To my knowledge, he hasn't had one of those episodes that you've described for a number of months, and I wish him well in his full recovery. But like I say, the question in my mind is, what are we using it for? He has proven very effective at uniting Democrats and dividing Republicans while alienating Republicans, and that's the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think it should sort of be like a baseline, and I probably speak for a lot of Democrats here. Let us unite over something, like, right? Let us join hands as a country and say that people who are having these kind of episodes where Joe Biden is talking with ghosts, right, and shaking hands of invisible people, and is not able to remember the death of his own son or his own vice presidency, like, those people shouldn't be in charge.
Absolutely.
Like, let me link hands with you, right, and say that Republicans who have those exact same symptoms should also not be in charge. We'll let's do this together, right?
Right, particularly where the commander-in-chief is involved. I mean, first of all, I want to make clear there's a gulf of difference between Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden. Mitch McConnell had a few episodes. Joe Biden routinely has them. It's almost
he is an episode.
He doesn't have the episode.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is, moreover, the commander-in-chief of the greatest military force ever assembled on planet Earth, and it's a really dangerous thing to have somebody in those circumstances. If the roles were reversed, even somebody with fewer publicly visible episodes, like Mitch McConnell, if he were in the White House, the press would be all over that. The press would be attacking him day and night relentlessly. You would never hear the end of it. And yet his issues have been far less severe. But the point remains, when it's the commander-in-chief, when it's the president of the United States, there is cause for concern. And we should all be worried about the condition of President Joe Biden. Even before we got to this special counsel report about the fact that he's apparently not mentally fit to even stand trial.
Yeah. You tweeted once, the song Blank Space is obviously about Biden. So
got the blank space, baby, and I'll write your name.
Well done.
I don't always quote Taylor Swift in media interviews, but as the dad of a daughter who's a huge Swiftie, it just comes out.
We do often make memes on this program. We've made a meme of you, sir, in the time that we've been doing this interview. This is the You Shall Not Pass Mike Lee as Gandalf, and we hope that you use it often from your account, Based Mike Lee. Everyone needs to go follow Based Mike Lee right now, the most based Mike Lee account, and it's not a parody account. It's actually Mike Lee. You see the little blue badge there. 181,000 people. Can't be wrong, right? Go follow Based Mike Lee. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for being the Gandalf of the Senate.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.